can say good morning because both Matthew and I are in Europe. Well, technically, you're not in Europe anymore. You're in the UK.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, in the
in,
continent of Europe, I think.
in the continent
Technically, we're still Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In the vicinity of Europe. So good morning, Matthew. Welcome to the Art of Service live stream. It's Thursday morning, the 28th of April. And I'm actually a bit excited about this one because we were just talking before and we can't even remember when we first met. So it's definitely over 10 years, but we've never really sat down like this and have an in-depth conversation of the past, the present, and the future. So welcome.
That's right. Well, thanks for inviting me. That's great to talk to you because, as you say, we sort of bump into each other at various events and conferences. You have a little chat, but you sometimes don't get a chance for a proper conversation.
Exactly. So your LinkedIn profile, I did have a look because I thought, okay, how do you introduce yourself on LinkedIn? And of course, you are a SFIA accredited consultant, an accredited assessor, trainer, a global design authority and council member, and a president of Skills TX. You're a very busy man. You're running a couple of businesses, but you're very, very busy with everything SFIA. However, when you introduce yourself, how do you introduce yourself, Matthew? Like either, at a barbecue at home or in a business conversation?
Yeah, it's always difficult because when people say, "What do you do?" and if you say, "Well, I sort of do something in IT," they immediately ask you to fix their computer, and I'm not very good at that these days. So if I'm explaining to somebody, I guess outside, maybe a family member, I work in and around the technology space, but I'm really focused on people and skills and competencies. So I help organizations and governments around the world with their skills and competencies management.
Excellent. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How people sort of go like, "Oh, I have this internet problem. Can you help me sort it out?" And I'm like, "Oh, dude, I have so many internet problems. I don't know how to fix it."
Yeah, it's a different set of skills. It's a bit like the Liam Neeson film, the Taken film. I have a certain set of skills, but the ones I have these days are not very good at fixing computers.
No, exactly. And we all evolve. Like it's an evolutionary process. I mean, if I look at myself, I came from well, don't tell anybody, but I'm actually an agricultural engineer by education. So I come from a training background as a teacher, and then sort of went into IT. So I don't have technology skills. I have skills for technology, but not.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing you find actually with a lot of the people that working in this space. They've got really quite diverse backgrounds. I mean, how I got into technology was through my music. I was using computers for sequencing and recording and programming synthesizers and all of those sorts of things. So actually, yeah, in my teens, my main use of computers was around music, then of course that evolved. It was doing project management and program management, and then lots of service management. But always found myself really focused back on the people side of things because it's quite interesting. Yeah, we're in the technology space, but actually we're really in the people business because no matter how clever we are with the technology, with artificial intelligence and machine learning and all of those things, we're actually still completely dependent on people and their skills and experience because it's people that gather the requirements and design the solutions and build them and support them and so on. Really, without the people, none of it would work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you say that you come from a musical background, like because you played in a band and, you did a lot of music. And it's always struck me as, because the first time we met, we were both very heavily involved with IT service management. And I've always seen that as sort of like a symphony and, sometimes a symphony of errors, but it's a symphony of all these different parts of an IT organization working together, creating something beautiful. And I can totally see, maybe I'm just, putting words in your mouth, but
I see that as well. It makes perfect sense to me because, most of us are not solo artists. We actually are reliant on other members of the orchestra or the band or the choir, whichever way you want to think about it. And quite often what we were doing about service management was helping to direct that. So it was almost like being the conductor of a choir or an orchestra sometimes, but then other times you were a member of the orchestra with somebody else leading on a particular element. So yeah, good analogy, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what are the skills that you feel that you've picked up from that musical background? What are the skills that you bring across into IT that is unique to that background?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, because the one of the things that's not always found in all musicians actually is an understanding. Well, my view on music is that really it's about conveying emotion.
Mm,
And I've worked with a lot of musicians who are technically very good musicians, so they can play all of the right notes at the right speed, in the right way, but actually you're still left with missing something, and
mm,
it's not moved you emotionally. And I think that sort of understanding of it, you can make a few mistakes,
mm,
but actually you've got to achieve an objective, and that links very much to the service management world and the technology world. We don't do technology for technology's sake. We do it to help achieve an outcome, whether it's delivering a service or a product to a customer, or enabling the completion of a project or a new system go live, whatever it might be. They're all to do something.
yeah,
So I think it's understanding that there's a greater end rather than doing things just for the sake of doing them.
yeah. And what kind of skills do you feel is required for IT to really sing and to really bring that emotion across?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, the thing is, there's quite a lot of different skills, and I guess that is a bit like the orchestra. You wouldn't have everybody in the orchestra all playing the same instrument.
Mm,
Yeah, they're all experts in different fields, and to make the music work, they have to focus on their particular specialisms and get them right and get them in harmony with everybody else. And it's the same when we have skills. A little while ago, I was working with the CIO who was trying to implement one of the most popular sort of HR systems, and this HR system limited them to only having 8 skills at 4 levels. So she was desperately trying to work out, how do I fit everything that my organization does into these 8 pockets, 8
mm,
skills? And she ended up generalizing and saying, right, okay, well, we've got one skill around sort of information security, and we've got another skill around development and operation, and we've got another one around service management. So and what that did is actually mask the fact that it's more complicated than that. She ended up, and we've got a cartoon that sort of illustrates this, and you've got a service desk manager who says, I need a new service desk analyst, and that analyst is going to have to grant people access to applications that they need access to. So they're doing some security permissions. So out of those 8 skills, they pick the information security skill because that's the relevant skill to them. But then you also get the chief information security officer who says, I need a new penetration tester. So
mm,
which is the skill? It's the information skill. Well, we know that penetration tester and that service desk analyst, it's not the same skill.
no,
So that's why in a framework like SFIA, the skills framework for the information age, we've got 121 professional skills at up to 7 levels. And sometimes you do need to get more detailed to make it meaningful, because clearly that service desk analyst is not the same as the penetration tester. Their career paths are going to be different. Their skill sets are different. So that's why you need to get a little bit more granular.
yeah. So before we dive deep into SFIA, because I do want to do that, if we step back to, because I know you're very passionate about skills, and that came out of the IT service management world.
Mhm.
So from a skills point of view, where do you feel I'm trying to think and talk at the same time, which is
Okay.
not smart. Because I have the idea that a lot of the education around IT, including IT service management based training, is very linear. Like you need this, and it's very focused on the technology, or in IT service
Yeah.
management technology, very focused on these are the processes, these are the activities, this is what you need to do. Um, so where do you feel that these kinds of education solutions should evolve to?
Yeah, I think there's a key challenge we've got in the industry of actually not recognizing the difference between knowledge,
Hmm.
theoretical understanding of something, and then applying that knowledge to become proficient in a skill, and then really completing your development and becoming a master of that skill, if you like, where we would probably call it a professional competency.
Mm.
And we have had this situation in the IT world where people go on a training course, maybe they go on the foundation training course, and they're given lots of knowledge, so they've got that theoretical understanding, and then they go back to their organizations and the organization says, great, you've been on the course, you're now in charge of doing this.
Yeah. Off you
And
go.
yeah, and it's a little bit like me, or any of us trusting our teenage child to drive the family car, packed with all the people that we love the most in the world, and drive that car on a long journey when they've never driven a car before. They've just passed their theory exam.
You do realize you just described the Australian system of how to get a driver's license.
Yeah, it's the same whether when years ago I used to I had my pilot's license, used to was flying a small plane, and as I explained to people, you don't get your pilot's license from doing the ground theory exams. You have to do those because that knowledge is essential. But then it's like the car. You go and sit in the car and you drive the car, but sitting next to you is an experienced instructor
Yeah.
who can get you out of trouble before you become dangerous,
Yeah.
and they're there as that safety, that risk mitigation, just to keep you honest, and then you practice and you practice and practice. And if you're learning to fly a plane, you do hundreds of landings. If
Mm.
you're driving a car, you do many miles of driving and you practice all the different types of maneuvers until you're proficient enough to be trusted to do it on your own. That's when you get your license. You're
Mm.
not an expert driver or a pilot when you get your license.
Yeah.
All we're saying is you're safe enough to be able to do it on your own. You then keep practicing, and hopefully maybe you'll become professionally competent in those skills later on.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a big challenge in our industry. It has been, that people do get given jobs because they've got a certificate that says they've been on the training course.
Mm. And I like the differentiation you have between you have knowledge, you build a skill, and then you create competency. Like there's
Yep.
that maturity level in how people approach theory, knowledge, skills,
Sure.
competency.
And
Yeah.
it is about risk appetite as well, because
Mm.
there's a lot of talk about, well, actually, people don't need skills. You can hire them because of their attitude,
Mm.
and then you can teach them the skills on the job. And that's true, but there are some tasks that actually you can't afford for them to make a critical error when they're doing it for real. So in the certain circumstances, the task might not be so critical, and it doesn't matter if they make a mistake. They can make the mistake, learn from the mistake. In other situations, you sort of need it to go right. So you might partner them with a mentor or a coach
Yeah.
or a manager closely supervising them to help them. You might put some safety guides in place to prevent those disasters.
Yeah.
And some tasks you just need somebody who's completely competent, professionally competent, and won't get it wrong.
Yeah. But like you said, that all depends on the type of role that person is performing in the organization. Because I have to admit, when I employ people for the active service for my company, I always favor culture and core value fit over skills.
Yeah.
But I don't hire heart surgeons. You know, I don't hire brain surgeons. Like, it's
exactly, that's right. And you know, how did brain surgeons learn? Well, they observe other people doing it. They maybe practice on dead bodies, actually, to do certain maneuvers. They might do simulated stuff. You know, there's lots of ways of doing it. But yeah, cultural fit, you know, attitude, really important. All of those things are. They're part of a bigger mix, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
And just recognizing the limitations of people and what you need to do to help them to develop the skill or to become professionally competent is the important thing. And that's what a lot of people miss. They just, oh, well, you've got the theory, you'll be fine.
Yeah. So how do you safeguard while you go through that skill, building your skill and building your competency? How do you safeguard containing or maintaining an open mind? Because, you know, when I talk about the type of people that I like to employ in my organization are people that have a beginner's mindset. Like, they continue to learn, are open to learning, and are open to growing. And I find that the longer a person has been in a particular pigeonholed role, the more closed their mindset tends to become, because they know, been there, done that. I know exactly how I have nothing new to learn in this particular field.
Yeah.
How do you break that open?
Well, sometimes you don't need to break that open. There are some people that are very comfortable with what they do. They're very expert in doing it, and they don't want to learn new things. They do well in what they're doing, and as long as there's still a need for that activity, you don't always have to force people to open up and to learn new skills. I think the reality of our industry is that most of the time you need to, and you need to be open to those new practices. But I have come across a few people who, you know, I can think of one recently. They're 5 years away from retirement. You know, they've got 30 years in the industry. They do a very structured, straightforward task that's needed, and they're just allowed to get on with it and do it because it's still there isn't the need for change in that. Whereas a lot of roles there is, you know, and even more constant change. You know, new technologies coming along, new practices, new you know, evolving best and good practice. Sort of requires most of us to have that view. So I think how you help those people is by understanding how they learn and what motivates them as well. So what's in it for them? You know, for a lot of people, you know, they want to learn because they want the more interesting tasks to do. Great. So if you want to do those more interesting tasks, we need to do a bit of training, bit of experience with some help, bit of, you know, there's a path to achieving that. But if that doesn't motivate them, if they're not interested in doing those new things, you know, they might not be the right person for you, the particular job you have, but there's maybe a place for them to do what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we take 3 steps back, because you came from the musical industry, I know I like to sort of talk things up, but you know, that's your background. Then you came into the IT industry, and you basically fell into IT service management, and you were very entrenched in that. But I've known you for the past, say, 14 years to be very passionate about SFIA. So when did the love affair with SFIA start, and how did it start?
Yeah. Well, actually, I went into the technology world sort of doing project and program management, which is a lot about understanding people and their capabilities as well, and managing them to achieve those outcomes. And I was doing a bit of service management and project management on a project about 21, 22 years ago. And this organization was going through a big organizational change, complete transformation. And they were redesigning the organization. And I was designing the operating model. You know, so a lot of that was based on things like ITIL and COBIT and those frameworks at the time. And So I was creating various options, right? We could operate like this, we could operate like that. I presented the options. Once the senior management team had picked the options, it was okay, now I need to get into some detail. So of course we look at products and services. What do we do? Yeah, we've got a set of products and services. Who do we do it for? Our customers and stakeholders. So we've got to know who they are. What outcome do they need to achieve through using our products and services? Then how are we going to do it, which is the process model? And then with what? And that with what included the technology, of course, so which systems and which technologies, but it also was which people in roles and jobs. And I then had to define the job descriptions and the role profiles as an extension of that operating model. And I thought, okay, well, rather than making this up, I wonder if there's something out there that will help me. And so I went looking and I found SFIA. I found the Skills Framework for the Information Age. And I thought, this is great. Somebody's already written the descriptions of what these activities are. All I need to do is, because I know the process, I know what this role does, I can find the relevant skills in SFIA and build a SFIA-based job description. And then for an individual, if you're hiring against that job description, you can see how well a candidate matches and make your decisions based on that. If you're training people up and developing them into the role, whatever it might be. So yeah, that's how I found SFIA, and I thought this makes a lot of sense. And you know, a lot of us in service management are quite people focused anyway, because we're looking at the processes, you know, which essentially is what do people do. And all I'm doing is just adding to that, what skills and competencies do they need at what level in order to do that activity. So it felt very natural. And frankly, there's a lot of people in IT who are uncomfortable with the people side of things. It's a bit of a stereotype, but there are a lot of technologists who are extremely comfortable with the technology, because you can prod a piece of technology and you get a predictable response back. Whereas when it comes to people, when you're interacting with them, you can get a different response depending on whether they had breakfast that morning or whether they had an argument with their other half the night before, whatever it might be. It's slightly unpredictable. And for a lot of technologists, because they can't put it into a predictable response, they sometimes try and avoid it and carry on focusing on the technology. And eventually it becomes a big enough problem that they're forced to address it.
Yeah. And you say, SFIA, that framework had all the job descriptions, so you could basically use that as the basis for your operational model. So how does
it doesn't have, just one kind of, it doesn't have the job descriptions. It has the building blocks that you use to create a job description, because take a role like a business analyst. You know, a business analyst, even in the same organization, in one team, I've met business analysts who do nothing but gather requirements and write business requirement specifications. But in another part of the organization, they've got the same job title of business analyst, and they do that same task, gathering requirements, writing business requirement specs, but they also design the acceptance tests. They contribute to the business case. They, they do a couple of other things. So you can't rely on job title. So SFIA deliberately doesn't give you here's the job description for a business analyst. It actually gives you those components. Here are the skills. And therefore, for your organization, you can create a business analyst job description that includes the SFIA elements that are relevant in your organization. So that is an important distinction. There, of course, are role profiles and job description templates out there, including on the SFIA Foundation website, that help you, but it's just a template as an example.
Yeah. So how does the framework, how is that created? Because I'm assuming it's evolving, because the building blocks that you've mentioned, they would have been different 20 years ago from
They
now.
certainly were, yeah.
So what's the data? What's the growth? What's the development of the framework in itself?
Yeah, so a couple of key things. The framework is not a theoretical model. It is a reflection of what we find out there in the working world. So it certainly evolves. We've just released version 8 of the framework last September. And there's lots of key differences from version 7 and version 6 and so on. You know, it's been around over 20 years, so it has evolved, and it does evolve regularly. We broadly have a new major version every 3 to 4 years. That's broadly how it's worked in the past. But it changes whenever it needs to change to reflect the changes in the working world, and how it's changed is that people from all over the world, you know, SFIA is used in nearly 200 countries around the world, so the people actually using SFIA, and you know, that's a real mix of people. There are academics from universities, there are professional bodies, there are consultants, trainers, practitioners. Anyone can contribute to the updates in SFIA. So we already, if you go on the SFIA website now, you'll find we're allowing people to raise change requests for the next version. So it's continual improvement, if you like. Anyone can input, and then with my colleagues on the design authority, our job is to coordinate that input and make some decisions. So if we get input, it might be something as simple as, I don't think SFIA covers this area well enough. It could be as simple as that. Or it could be, actually, we think there's a skill missing, and here's a full description and all the descriptions at the level. Some people are very detailed. So open consultation. Anyone can provide the feedback. We have to coordinate it a bit, because sometimes you get conflicting inputs and you have to work those through. We sometimes set up a lot of discussion groups with particular experts looking at particular disciplines, and we have themes that we look at. And then we make the changes, we push it out there for people to review and to feedback on. So we did a beta release of the version, get a bit of feedback, finalize it, release it, and then open it up again for the next set of suggestions.
Yeah.
So it's very practical. Lots of diverse input from all over the place.
Yeah. And you say, like, it's the skills framework for information roles, or, like, to me, that's not just IT. So what other organizations can use this framework?
Yeah, you're right. It is a much wider scope than most people would think of as IT. And actually that's one of the trends I've seen, that a lot of the skills in SFIA you find outside of an IT department, increasingly so. So it covers digital skills, obviously the ICT, information communications technology skills, but it's even got things like sales and marketing skills, but they're all in a technology related environment. So the sorts of sales and marketing skills that you would find associated with digital and technology, but it's got project management, business analysis, all the information security, cyber, what else? Relationship management roles, some HR, learning and development, professional development. And there's also a whole section on what we call sort of generic responsibility attributes, which include behavioral elements as well, behavioral factors. So things like influencing, communication skills. Some people refer to those as soft skills. But some people hate that term because there's nothing soft about them. They're difficult to acquire and learn.
Yeah.
But and I guess that's, again, something that challenges some IT people sometimes, because the hard technology specialisms are great and they're a vital part. But actually, if you don't have the influencing skills or the communication skills to get that point across to the stakeholders you're engaging, you're missing something. So SFIA does a really good job of covering all of those aspects.
So listening to you about, the role of the SFIA framework, I'm actually questioning whether or not, going into the future, whether or not it is an IT or technology specific framework. Because
Mm.
I would say that as entrepreneurs, as business owners, and even as, when you look at enterprise and corporations,
Sure.
everybody is going through a digital transformation
Yep.
process. Well, not everybody, but a lot of organizations are.
Mm.
But most organizations utilize applications, SaaS solutions, cloud-based solutions.
Mm.
And a lot of organizations don't even need an internal IT organization anymore, and
Yep.
therefore could say, SFIA, not for us. We don't have IT. Everything is outsourced. I would hesitate to guess that they exemplify the need for a SFIA framework in their organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. You will
Probably
find.
preaching to the converted, but
Well, yeah, but that's the transition that we've made in the technology world. If you go back 15, 20 years ago, technology was back office. Yeah.
Mm,
You had these systems. If they didn't work, you could revert to pen and paper and do just fine. No problem at all. In recent years, that's just not been practical. If the application isn't working, the system isn't working, the service doesn't get delivered, the product doesn't work, and people, end users, end customers are directly affected. So it's much more critical now. And these organizations, I think you would find it very hard to find an organization in any industry that doesn't have some sort of dependency on these digital and technology related skills that are in SFIA. So certainly, yeah, I find them in people that wouldn't
mm,
even ever think of themselves as a technology person. And for those organizations where they outsource, actually they still need some of those SFIA skills, because they've got to do contract management with those outsourcers. That's
mm,
one of the skills in SFIA.
yeah,
Yeah, they've got to do stakeholder relationship management with their customers. They've got to, communicate, do the marketing, whatever it might be. All of those things are covered in SFIA. And actually, they can use SFIA to make a conscious decision on which skills they want to have internally
mm,
and which skills they're going to buy in from an outsourcer or a managed service provider or a contractor or whatever. So
yeah,
actually, you can use it in strategic sourcing decisions
yeah,
as well as development.
yeah. So now I always talk to people about risk management and risk
Mm.
mitigation,
Yep.
leadership. So your role with, or your work with SFIA, how does that help organizations lead through risky changes, risky environments?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So one of the key risks that we've got is that we don't have the right people with the right skills and competencies to do what we need to do. So if you think about the risks that appear and make the press in an organization, like we've had a security breach, yeah,
Mm,
we've lost some data, somebody's hacked our system. When you actually investigate most of those, it's actually a skills issue. They don't have somebody with the right skill at the right level in the right position to have
mm,
prevented that from happening. So at the biggest high level, I would say that the biggest risk is not knowing where your skills and competencies risks are.
mm,
Most organizations don't have a skill inventory.
yeah.
Um, so they don't know what skills they've got, and they don't know what skills they're missing.
Mm,
So the first step often when I'm working with organizations is to answer the what skills do I have question.
mm,
So do an assessment so that you know where you're starting from. So it's a little bit like navigating. If you're using satellite navigation on your phone, yeah, you turn the phone on and it connects with these satellites and tells you where you are and
mhm,
plots where you are on a map. And that map is a standard naming convention. The building or the street or wherever it is you are, you know where you're starting from. And if you're going to plot a route, wherever you're going, next destination, you've got to pick that on the map and you plot the route. Now, what companies are doing, if they don't know the skills they've got training, they've still got training and development plans, but they're all starting from the wrong place. So they're all wrong. Their risk is that they'll find out the hard way where those skill gaps are by having a security breach or a service failure or whatever, and then find out that they're focusing on the wrong skills. So yeah, the massive risk of services falling over. You look at digital transformation projects. Everybody's got a digital transformation program going on. And if you look at some of the stats around the failure rates of those, it's quite embarrassing, really. Very high failure rate. And often it's because they don't know what skills they need to do the transformation. And then they don't know what skills they need to operate in that transformed way, and they're different skill sets. So everything you do, it has a skills related element to it. So if you're not thinking, okay, we're going to go live with this new service, do we need any new skills? Do we need more people with the same skills? Do we need, there's always a people and skills related element to it. So in terms of risk,
how do you avoid, because red flags are popping up in my head immediately, because when you talk about assessing skills and finding the data, like the old-fashioned garbage in, garbage out, like, how do you safeguard that the information that you're recording in your assessment is true and valid? Because when you ask people like about, if you ask a person about their skills, it's 9 out of 10 times it's over reported, like, oh yeah, I have this and this and this and this and this, and then when you put it to the test, you go like, no, you may think you do, but no, it's not good enough. So how do you mitigate that risk?
And the answer is several different ways. There's no one answer to this. And this is the art of doing this properly. If you ask people the question in the wrong way, you're going to get skewed data. So I'll give you a few examples, right? A lot of organizations will start off by writing their job descriptions. So, okay, I've written my job description. Ivanka, here's your job description. Here are the skills that you need to have in order to do your current job properly. Now tell me honestly which of these skills you have. Now, despite you being the most honest person in the world,
you do want to keep your job.
You're psychologically pressurized to fit yourself into that framework and to say, oh, I don't want to be seen to be not able to do my job. I really need, and I try and shoehorn myself into that framework. Now, if you take a different approach, because you take that approach, you're guaranteed to get skewed data, because you force people into trying to fit themselves in rather than giving you an accurate view. But you're also only going to get partial data because you've only asked them about their current role. And Gartner say that the skill requirements for a role change at least 10% each year. So when in 3 months' time, when you need one of those skills at a higher level in that role, you've got to go and ask them again. So it's a crazy way of doing it, but most people think that's the best approach. Imagine another way round, right? You may have skills that I don't know you've got. We're all unique. We've got different backgrounds. Even two people that started in the same role in the same company on the same day have got a different set of experience because they've worked in different projects or different tasks. Their background in previous roles will be different. So the first thing I want to do is understand what skills you have. So we're going to use this framework called SFIA because it helps us to describe those skills. And let's find out about you. I'm interested in you and all of your skills. So one thing is how you ask the question in the first place. But then even before that, how you communicate what you're doing and why is one of the biggest risk mitigations. Because if you say to people, we're doing an assessment, just answer these questions, they're going to think, why are you asking me those questions? Have we got a round of redundancies coming up and you're trying to work out who to get rid of? Or, what's happening? And depending on how you feel about that, you might answer those questions differently. So one person might say, well, I want to stay. So if I say yes to everything, I'm more likely to be selected to stay. And another person might say, oh, the package is quite good for redundancy. I could go and spend more time in the garden. I'll say I've got no skills at all, and then they'll have to give me the package. So you've got to do the communications and the management of change piece, right. So why are we doing it? Well, we don't know what skills everybody's got. We want to know where we're starting from. That's going to help you to get the support you need to develop the skills that you need to progress in your career. You'll get greater opportunities for development. You'll get, if you want more interesting work, this is an opportunity for doing that. If you want recognition for the skills you've got, this is another way of doing that as well. So there's lots in it for them. So communicate what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, what you're going to do with the data, and how it's going to help them. What's in it for me? Yeah, the standard WIFM response. Yeah, what's in it for me? You've got to answer that. Then be clever about how you ask. Explain to them that actually, if you overestimate your skills, and we think you've got a skill because you've told us you've got it, that means I can give you a task to do that requires that skill at that level. If you fail to do that task properly, well, that's surely a performance conversation. It's because you've got that skill. So don't overestimate your skills, because you could get yourself into trouble, by being asked to do something that requires that skill and failing, and that's not good for you or the organization. Don't underestimate your skills, because that way some of your skills, you might not get the chance to maintain them because we don't know you've got them. And actually, you find that certain roles are more likely to overestimate their skills. Certain roles are more likely to underestimate their skills. A lot of it's just down to pure psychology and the types of roles they do. And then how you structure the questions. We spend a lot of time in doing this. If you're going to do self-assessment, how you ask the question, the options you give them, how you present that data increases the accuracy. Then you've got other mechanisms that you can bring into play. Managers reviewing it with them, and helping to adjust. Assessors, whether they're internal assessors or external assessors. There are even algorithms within our tools that spot unusual self-assessment results. So there's lots of things you can do once you've got that first set of data to refine it and make it even better and even more accurate. And it's like any tool, what do they say? A fool with a tool is still a fool. As I said to somebody, I can't remember where it was, I think it was in Dubai doing some training, and I said to somebody, just because you can afford a Ferrari doesn't mean you won't wrap it around the first lamppost because you've driven it badly. So it's the same with SFIA or any other framework. You've got to also use it well to get a good result.
And it's all about providing that clarity, isn't it? Like clarity of why are we doing this, clarity of what are we going to do with this information, and what does the future look like, and how does it fit in within the vision of the organization. And it doesn't really matter whether it's a particular type of technology or AI or whatever it is. It's about how we are evolving as an organization.
Yeah, well, that's another thing about the technology. Sometimes people think the technology is a skill. So they say, okay, I know SQL is a skill, but no, SQL is a technology. What do you do with that? Are you writing scripts and programs in that? Or are you designing solutions in that? Or are you project managing projects and include it? The skill is actually, what do you do? The technology is just an attribute of that, really. So I manage databases. They happen to be Oracle databases or SQL databases or whatever it might be. It's another element, but it's not a skill in its own right.
No, it's the skill of being able to manage a database like that. And then you can exchange an Oracle database for something else, or maybe a database system that is yet to be designed or discovered. And but the skill of actually working with it is transferable to a different type of technology.
but that's why we have a problem. I had a contact from a recruitment agency a while ago, and they said, we've got a CV of yours from 20 years ago, because and would you be interested in this Oracle database administrator role? And it's like, well, first of all, I'm not looking for work. I haven't been for 20 years, which is why the CV's 20 years out of date. But actually, I don't have the skills to be an Oracle DBA. I never have had. Oh, but you came up on our search. And I said, yeah, I know why I came up on your search, because 25 years ago, I was the program manager for an Oracle Financials implementation project. And you've picked the word Oracle off that CV and you've phoned me. That, if you'd used SFIA, you wouldn't have even contacted me, because my skills don't match the skills that you're looking for.
No. Let's have a sales talk.
Yeah, how can I help you? Yeah, exactly.
No, but it does go full circle in the sense that we started talking today about non-technology backgrounds, be it education or music, and that those skills have been transferable into the IT industry. And I think that's the strength of what you're doing with the SFIA framework, is to identify skills independent from the technology or the framework within those skills are applied, which means you can evolve those skills and use them in different business scenarios.
And with the skills shortages that most organizations and governments are reporting in the technology and digital skills, actually they do need people from different backgrounds to think about their transferable skills. So a lot of business relationship managers, actually, some of the best ones have come from a sales and marketing background. For example, there are lots of transferable skills, and we're doing some work with the government in Australia around this, and a couple of other countries as well. But Australia is a really good example, where they have the Digital Skills Organization, where they've highlighted that actually they've got a big shortage and they need to develop these new skills. And our assessments sort of used for people that are not in IT or technology related skills to consider those roles. So they can do an assessment and say, well, actually, I've got one or two of these skills that are transferable, but actually I can also see these interesting career paths. And I now know what they involve and what activities I do. And I can sort of pick the path that's most interesting to me and see the things that I need to do to put myself on that path.
Yeah, it's so, and it makes for such a more interesting future for everybody involved. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to know more about skills or SFIA, or just transferring current skills into a technology role? I have your LinkedIn profile here, which is Matthew Burrows. But your company, Skills TX, we haven't even talked about your company, but I'm sure we did talk about your company, because we talked about everything that you do from an assessment and a support point of view. So that's skillstx.com. So that's an easy way for people to get in touch with you, unless you have a better way for people to talk to you.
No, SkillsTX is a good, skillstx.com is a good starting point. There's a contact details on there. I'm very happy for people to connect with me on LinkedIn and raise questions as well. You'll find a lot of information online. So go to skillstx.com. We've got things that give you an overview of SFIA. There's obviously the SFIA Foundation website as well, which we link to, so you can start from there. So yeah, we're always very happy to talk to people and give them some guidance on how to do things, whether we're helping them or not, but just having a chat and seeing about this area is the first thing to do. We do have what Skills TX does is three things. We're a SFIA accredited partner and training provider. So we have a SaaS tool that people use, because frankly, keeping your skills up to date on a spreadsheet is just not possible these days. We need tools to help us. So we have a tool that helps people. We have a set of SFIA training. So we deliver all the accredited training. And we also do some professional services and supporting services for people that need that. So yeah, so people get the choice. They can do it themselves. They can, yeah, choose.
Yeah, that's cool. And definitely check out the website, because I love the stylized photos that you guys use for the team. That's really cool.
That's for Paul. Yes, he put those together, so you know Paul well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, there's a lot of information. We try and share a lot of information to make it easy for people. So, yeah, reach out and we can help you, often with no cost.
Fabulous. Well, it's the first step, and it's all about spreading the word of focusing on skills rather than a product description.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important. You know, people are we are in the people business, as we said at the beginning, and a lot of organizations are struggling to attract people, to retain them, to develop them, and therefore people and skills is really critically important, at least as important as your technology. You wouldn't, if you didn't know how many servers you had or what applications you were supporting, you'd be in trouble as a CIO. And I think you'd be in trouble if you don't know what people and skills you've got. It's
Yeah,
equally important.
exactly. Like Jim Collins says, right people on the right seat in the right bus.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, we're going to close this off today. Thank you so much for your time, Matthew. Don't run away yet. We're going to close the live stream, but I just want to say, have a chat with you afterwards as well.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Lovely. Thank you. Bye. And I'll see you guys online next week.